Hello, history buffs, lovers of the absurd, and anyone who's ever lost a fight with a particularly stubborn pigeon. Today, we're diving headfirst into one of the strangest conflicts ever recorded, a moment in time when a modern military power officially declared war on birds. Yes, you heard that right. Birds. Not Hitchcockian killer birds, mind you, but big, flightless, slightly goofy-looking birds. We're talking about the Great Emu War of 1932, where the mighty Australian military faced off against an army of feathered foes, and frankly, got their tail feathers handed to them. So, picture this. It's Western Australia, 1932. The world is in the grips of the Great Depression and things are tough all over. Down under, many returning World War I veterans had been encouraged by the government to take up wheat farming in often marginal lands. It was a hard life, made even harder by falling wheat prices. But just when these tough-as-nails farmers thought things couldn't get much worse, nature decided to throw them a curveball. Or rather, about 20,000 curveballs, covered in feathers, standing 6 feet tall, and capable of running faster than a racehorse. The annual emu migration was on. Now, emus aren't exactly fluffy little songbirds. They are the second largest living bird by height, after their cousin the ostrich. They're tough, they're resilient, and they have an insatiable appetite. And in 1932, after their breeding season, a massive flock decided that the newly cultivated farmlands looked like an all-you-can-eat buffet. They descended upon the wheat fields, trampling crops, gobbling grain, and smashing through fences specifically designed to keep out smaller pests like rabbits. These weren't just nuisance birds. They were becoming an existential threat to the livelihoods of these already struggling farmers. The farmers, many of whom were ex-soldiers themselves, did what any reasonable group facing an overwhelming feathered invasion would do. They appealed to the government for military assistance. A deputation of these farmer veterans met with the Minister of Defense, Sir George Pierce. Now, you might expect the Minister of Defense to be dealing with, defense-y things, international threats, military budgets, that sort of stuff. But here he was, faced with a delegation demanding heavy artillery to deal with overgrown chickens. Surprisingly, perhaps swayed by the farmer's plight, or maybe just seeing a unique public relations opportunity, or perhaps just not really thinking it through, Sir George agreed. The Australian military was going to war. Enter Major G.P.W. Meredith of the Royal Australian Artillery's 7th Heavy Battery. He was given command of this unusual operation, equipped with 2 Lewis automatic machine guns and a hefty supply of 10,000 rounds of ammunition. His troops consisted of himself and 2 soldiers to operate the guns. The plan seemed simple enough. Head out to the affected areas, find the emus, and let rip with the machine guns. The farmers would help locate and perhaps even herd the birds. What could possibly go wrong? It was modern weaponry against, well, birds that can't even fly. This would be a walk in the park, a turkey shoot, albeit with much larger, faster turkeys. The first attempt began in early November 1932. Major Meredith and his men rolled into the Campion district just, anticipating a swift victory. Scouts reported a flock of about 50 emus. Excellent. The soldiers set up their Lewis guns, took aim, and prepared to unleash hell. The farmers tried to herd the birds into range, but the emus, it turned out, were surprisingly savvy tacticians. Instead of clustering together like feathered fools, the moment the shooting started, the main flock split into numerous small groups and scattered in all directions, making effective machine gun fire almost impossible. It's like trying to swat a swarm of flies with a sledgehammer. Undeterred, Meredith tried again a couple of days later. This time they located a much larger flock, perhaps 1,000 strong, near a local dam. This was it. They set up an ambush. Surely this time they'd get a significant tally. The gunners opened fire, and the gun jammed after only about a dozen birds fell. While the soldiers frantically tried to fix the weapon, the remaining 980-odd emus simply melted away into the bush. Major Meredith later reported, with perhaps a touch of bewildered respect, that the emus seemed almost impervious to bullets. He noted that even birds hit multiple times kept running. He lamented, if we had a military division with the bullet-carrying capacity of these birds, it would face any army in the world. They can face machine guns with the invulnerability of tanks. High praise indeed for the enemy. Another cunning plan involved mounting one of the Lewis guns onto a truck. The idea was to chase the emus down. This resulted in a comical, bumpy pursuit across the rugged terrain. The emus, capable of speeds up to 30 miles per hour, easily outran the truck on the rough ground. The gunner couldn't get a steady aim. The ride was too rough. And apparently no emus were hit during these mobile engagements. One report even mentions the truck crashing through a fence and narrowly avoiding disaster, while the emus disappeared over the horizon, probably sharing a good laugh. After nearly a week of this farcical campaign, the results were underwhelming, to say the least. Official figures vary slightly, but the consensus is that despite firing thousands of rounds, estimates range from 2,500 to nearly all 10,000. Only a few dozen to maybe a couple of hundred emus were actually killed. The press back east started having a field day. Headlines mocked the military struggle. Questions were raised in Parliament about the cost and sheer absurdity of using machine guns on birds. One politician wryly asked if medals would be awarded for this war. Facing mounting ridicule and spectacularly poor results, Major Meredith and his men were recalled on November 8th. Round 1 decisively went to the emus. But the farmers weren't laughing. The emus were still there, still eating everything, and the pressure mounted again. Incredibly, despite the previous fiasco, the Minister of Defense authorized a second expedition just a few days later, starting around November 13th. Major Meredith, perhaps with gritted teeth, went back into the field. He reportedly adopted different tactics this time, engaging smaller groups at closer ranges. There was apparently slightly more success in this second phase. Official reports claimed nearly 1,000 emus were killed over the next month, using up almost all the remaining ammunition. But even Meredith had to concede that the birds were just too numerous and too elusive. He acknowledged that the killing rate wasn't high enough to make a dent in the vast emu population. By early December, the operation was officially called off for good. The Great Emu War was over. Final score, emus 1, Australian Army 0. The military withdrew, leaving the farmers still facing their feathered nemesis. The whole affair became a national embarrassment, a bizarre footnote in military history symbolizing, perhaps, the folly of applying brute force solutions to complex ecological problems. So, what happened in the end? Well, the government realized that machine guns weren't the answer. Instead, they turned to a more effective, if less dramatic solution, a bounty system. Over the next few years, paying bounties encouraged farmers and hunters to cull the emu population themselves. This proved significantly more successful than the military intervention, though managing the populations remains a challenge even today. Fencing also improved over time, providing better barriers. But the legend of the Great Emu War lives on. It's a perfect storm of historical circumstance, economic desperation, and sheer biological absurdity. It reminds us that nature is often more resilient and unpredictable than we assume, and that sometimes even the best-laid plans involving machine guns can be thwarted by a bunch of large, flightless birds with surprising tactical awareness. It's a story that's just too good, too strange, and honestly, too funny not to share. Who knew feathered dinosaurs could teach a modern military a lesson in humility? Thanks for joining me on this bizarre journey into Australia's weirdest war. Let me know in the comments if you've heard any other unbelievable true stories you'd like me to tackle. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and maybe check your backyard for any suspiciously large birds planning world domination. See you next time.